one of our system designers has agreed to come on and answer some questions about gear. As an added bonus, most of the questions, no, if not all of the questions that he's going to be answering here today have been directly sourced from players who are part of our ambassador program. So we were able to dive just a little bit deeper into gear if I had just come up with the question by myself. So, hi, Tank.
Hi, I'm Tank. I'm a systems designer for Game of Thrones Conquest. My work touches on several parts of the game, but a primary focus is being part of the team that develops and releases our monthly gear sets with our events.
Thank you. So first, we're going to be diving into our ambassador questions, well, only. And our first one is from Artie, who is from 1637. And they asked, how do you think about balance in different troop types when it comes to designing new gear?
Yeah, balance is one of the top focuses when it comes to designing new gear sets. Not only do we want to ensure that each troop type feels like it has the equipment to shine in our game, but we want to make sure that neither attacking nor defending feels like they have too much of an advantage at any point, too. With troop types, we ensure balance by providing similar pieces for infantry, ranged, and cavalry with each season of gear. Um, the order of the release means there may be moments when a particular troop type has an advantage for a month or two, but we
Right.
don't want to end a season with any troop feeling like it's been given extra pieces or any kind of significant advantage.
Talking about, we don't want to give like that advantage or like those extra pieces. How do you know which stats to focus on and what troop types needs what? And from Tay of 1599 and then Scorpion King of 1590 also asked, do you have spreadsheets of stats based like with the information to traffic?
When it comes to what stats to focus on for gear sets, it depends on the kind of set being designed. There are certainly spreadsheets involved for all of our sets. We track the history of what's been used for previous sets in older seasons of gear, stats for attack, defense, health, march sizes, troop versus troop stats. Those are all mainstays of our core troop sets. They're always going to show up, but what we need to pay attention to is the ratios of the stats we use
Mm,
among them and how much each changes depending on the history and uh, actually our current state of combat results that we track across kingdoms. We're always looking at you guys. Um, we track what the difficulty is for turning over seats of power, as well as individual keep combat and node combat to make adjustments each season for balance.
right. And because we're all tracking that, as Targ of 1637 asked, how much time and testing goes into these gear stats before they officially released?
Well, just for the stats part of gear, we take a few weeks to develop those. There's testing, iteration on each gear set before release. Gear stats get reviewed across designers, and then our player council, and then our internal testers to make sure that things are working properly and they feel right. Um, there's usually an iteration pass after each of these steps in the review process. If we're using a new stat in particular that hasn't been seen before on gear, we have to take extra care to make sure our internal testing team has a little bit of extra time to make sure that things are working properly before we let players get their hands on it.
Like our most recent news stat, which was the max stat. So, um, Freya of 1637 asked, how do you plan out each troop specific gear to be better than the last? And Mehora of 1656 asked, is the intention when developing a new gear set to always outperform its predecessor? Or is the intention to open the opportunity for season gear mixing to be possible? Both or none of the above?
Well, in terms of planning, this is another job for our spreadsheets. Yeah, we live in those. When we go to a new season, we know the numbers are going to go up a set amount. We've figured out how much our numbers go up. That inflation helps us give a start in making each set better than the previous season. The rest of the work lies in looking at those previous seasons of gear, seeing the stat composition of each piece in its core set, and developing a new array for each piece that will accomplish something that just does better at one goal than those pieces that already exist did. Um, We intend for each new set of gear to be good and worthwhile to craft. However, we don't want each piece to be the best at absolutely everything.
Right.
Some have high attack, some have higher defense stats, some have really great march size. We want some mixing between sets to try to maximize different stats and combat objectives. Your attack set and your reinforcement set having different pieces mixed from a few sets is pretty much intended. Uh, we want figuring out how to get the most out of your gear to be part of like a puzzle.
Right. And, regarding because you have to place all that stuff together, the puzzle, what have you been surprised at in terms of popularity, in terms of stats, or something you would have thought had been popular or well received but wasn't? This question is from House Chene of 1590.
Getting surprised happens often when we try out new things. We can only make educated decisions from what new to try and what we hope that everybody finds useful in every new set. But sometimes things aren't as in demand or popular as we hoped once it actually gets released. For new stats being released, sometimes we could do a great job at guessing how people will feel. Like, apparently people really love percent max march size.
Yes, of course.
Occasionally we miss the mark, though, for things with our experiments, like giving player troops piercing damage.
What's that? Never heard of it.
Yeah, me either. It was a stat that would bypass the defensive stat that is on all troops, and we certainly heard the feedback from it in playtesting.
Right.
The way we tried introducing it was not nearly as welcomed by players as we hoped it would be. And players were certainly heard, and we did not end up releasing it.
Which I approve of. That doesn't exist. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm joking. You were talking about how sometimes things aren't as in demand or as popular, when you release it. And Mahora of 1656 asked, has the design team ever experienced an instance where they ended up being dissatisfied with a piece of gear once the players got their hands on them? And if so, what did that conversation look like afterwards?
Certainly. We've had sets that haven't performed like we anticipated. We hope for players to want everything we release, but sometimes the demand isn't there. Usually what happens after something like this is we sit down, we talk about what we can do better next time. Sometimes that means not making a set like that anymore.
Yeah.
That theme might just not work out for what you guys want. Sometimes this means just doing a better job next time for next season. On occasion, we do release something that we know players won't exactly love, but the set includes stats that we want you to have anyway for the health of the game and the meta. We prepare ourselves for a bit of negative feedback before and after release in these cases, but overall, we just want to make things that make people happy.
You want to make people happy, but we also want to make sure the game stays balanced.
Exactly.
In our last question, from Artie of 1637, because we were talking about discussing things that you change over time based on that player's feedback. Are there things you'd like to address or change over time? And if so, how does that factor into your design process?
Well, balance changes over time is something that the gear creation team has always been working on. The early seasons of gear had a focus on trying to fix our troop balance. Cavalry was extremely popular in the early seasons of Game of Thrones Conquest. We had more cavalry players than both infantry and ranged players combined.
And they love to brag about it.
We made fixing this imbalance a focus of the design process. We looked for stats that would help underrepresented troop types. Over time, we were able to make these non-cavalry troop types more appealing by including stats that made them feel better to use, like more consistent march speeds, and also just having stat availability that allows those particular troop types to take advantage of what they're best at. Early on in our game, march speeds were not nearly as prevalent on gear, and numbers were much smaller. It slowed down marching your troops across the map quite a bit, and it really made sense for your army to just be all horses.
Right.
Addressing these issues through gear has created a much more balanced representation of troop types in this day and age.
Perfect. I believe that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming to talk with us.
Awesome. Thank you for including me. Thank you very much.
And if you guys wanna we're gonna be releasing a blog, with all of these questions transcribed for y'all to read later, but we also have some additional questions, from our ambassadors that weren't included here that you can read up on when we post them. So, thank you again, Tank, and, that is all I have.